Welcome to this presentation about stream entry and beyond. Its aim is to produce an overview of stream entry and beyond. Buddha's teachings were founded by Prince Siddhartha Gautama, known as the Buddha, who lived more than 2,500 years ago in India. The word Buddha means enlightened. Enlightenment is the key aspect of Buddha's teachings. Enlightenment is a peaceful mental state which occurs due to a perfect understanding of the world as it really is. Enlightenment is experienced across its 4 stages. At the first stage of enlightenment, a stream enterer, one becomes, and thereafter, once returner, a non-returner, and at the final stage, one becomes an Arahant. Essentially, these 4 stages of enlightenment are different, and therefore, the way in which one needs to practice to each stage of enlightenment differs as well. Interestingly, when one gains realization across these 4 stages, it is impossible for one to be not aware at one stage one's at. In other words, enlightenment comes along with the awareness of one's own enlightenment, happens along with one's awareness. There are various kinds of fetters that are abundant at each stage of enlightenment, and we shall explore these in depth as we go further along this presentation. Sotapanna is the first stage of enlightenment. PALI, that means the fruition of stream entry. One who enters the stream, with the stream being the supermanded noble eightfold path, regarded as the highest Dhamma. So the right understanding is the first step or the first stage of noble eightfold path, and the right understanding itself means abandoning these 3 fetters. And these 3 fetters that a sotapanna abandons are identity view, doubt in Buddha, rites and rituals. So identity view, that means the idea that there is no permanent self, and that also comes with doubt in Buddha and what are his teachings. And so in other words, for those practitioners who are genuinely interested in gaining realization, reflecting on these 2, the first and the second and the third fetters could provide some clues. In other words, if someone can identify who Buddha is and where to find his teachings, in the sense, as in the contemporary context, this may be a bit difficult to find Buddha's teachings. Unlike in Buddha's time, when Buddha was there, it would have been pretty straightforward for someone to visit Buddha and ask about his teachings and to understand his teachings. However, we live in a time that roughly about 2,600 years later, where there are many schools, many traditions, many divisions, and various practitioners says various things. And so where to find Buddha's teachings? If someone can actually find Buddha's teachings, that will help one to gain realization. And this point also important, in other words, raise us and take us to the next level. In other words, just like in any other subject, let's say in science or social sciences, it is always the practice to question why. So equally, in Dhamma practice, if someone can always question why and seek out and try to observe a wider picture, that would help one to identify where to find Buddha's teachings. One of the most popular suttas could also be helpful in that sense. As you know, most practitioners are aware about this Kalama Sutta, where Buddha recommends not to go by reports, legends, traditions, scriptures, and so on. But if someone knows for themselves that these qualities are unskillful, blameworthy, criticized by the wise, just abandon them. On the contrary, if there are certain practices leading to eradicate greed, hate, and delusion, follow these practices. So what is the practice, or what are the where to find the teachings of Buddha that helps one to abandon greed, hate, and delusion in the right way? Are there people who have abandoned greed, hate, and delusion? And if at all, in what way and following what path have they that help them to abandon this greed, hate, and delusion? And what are they saying? And if at all, by following what they're saying, is it possible for a third party to experience it for themselves? And this kind of questioning and seeking will help one to find out Buddha's true teachings that resides beyond all kind of traditions and schools. So essentially, a person who becomes a Sri Mentor, that just means a person becomes very open-minded, who can see beyond self-will, who abandons doubts about Buddha and his teachings, and who abandons rites and rituals or clinging to traditions and schools at the same time. Essentially, these factors are abandoned at once, and so for practitioners who are interested in becoming Sri Mentors, this kind of thinking, always asking why and seek broad explanations, this kind of practice could be helpful in finding where to find Buddha's teachings and to find out the right practice. As you see in this MN 104, Vansananda Thero says to Buddha that when the Buddha has passed away, they might create a dispute in the Sangha regarding livelihood of the monastic code. Such a dispute would be for the hurt and unhappiness of the people, for the harm, hurt, and suffering of gods and humans. In response to that, Buddha says, Ananda, dispute about livelihood or the monastic code is a minor matter. But should a dispute arise in the Sangha concerning the path or the practice, that would be for the hurt and unhappiness of the people, for the harm, hurt, and suffering of gods and humans. Then if we were to apply what you just mentioned, then we would be questioning, why did Buddha mention that? Path or the practice, maintaining and talking about the right path and practice is important because right path and practice should eventually help one to gain fruition. If at all by following a certain path or practice, one is unable to gain fruition, then it is reasonable to that path and practice. Similarly, if there is a path and practice, if only one person can gain awakening, such a path and practice will not have much benefit for other practitioners. On the contrary, if there is a path and practice that leads to fruition and that allows many practitioners to gain awakening, leading to happiness, that is beneficial. And so Buddha's teachings are such that there is a path and practice, and by following the right path and practice, one should be able to gain realization without any difficulty. Once again, if we were to take the approach of why, then we would most likely be asking, why was it people during Buddha's time was able to gain realization quicker? And why is it today we hardly hear about practitioners who gain realization? Potentially, we could provide some clarifications. One of them could be such that the number of practitioners who have actually gained realization are rare. This could be a compelling reasoning. When the number of practitioners who have gained realization are rare will be the discussion based on right path and practice, allowing others to gain path and practice, allowing others to practice in the right way leading to fruition. So once again, this kind of questioning, if at all, is there a path and practice? What is the right path and practice? And by practicing this way, does it lead to fruition? And if it's not, then what way? What else? What are the alternative ways? And so this kind of being open-minded and following and seek ways and looking for ways and finding out ways to seek Buddha's original message will be massively helpful for those practitioners who are genuinely wanting and seeking enlightenment. Once again, talking about the fetters that are abandoned by a Sri mentor are identity view, doubting Buddha and his teachings, including rites and rituals. So once again, to mention briefly, the person who gains non-self view also abandons doubts about Buddha and what are his teachings by understanding what Buddha has actually said, and abandon at the same time rites and rituals which are created by third parties who are not Buddha himself, due to perfect confidence in Buddha and his teachings. In other words, the practitioners who are seeking enlightenment will benefit always maintaining an open mind to examine where to find Buddha and his true teachings, and also see beyond non-self view, and also to see beyond rites and rituals. Once returner will at most return to the realm of senses one more time, and they possess weakened sensual desire and ill will. Non-returner abandons sensual desire and ill will. Arhat abandon material rebirth desire, immaterial rebirth desire, conceit, restlessness, and ignorance. There are 10 fetters, and sometimes we can see in certain suttas, such as 5 lower fetters, and there are 5 higher fetters, and so on. And we can see these things are repeatedly present across various suttas. And the Noble Eightfold Path is to be developed for direct knowledge of these 5 lower fetters, as well as for direct knowledge of 5 higher fetters. So there are various things that could help a practitioner to gain realization. As most people are aware, practicing and performing meritorious acts are always beneficial. So one should practice giving, follow rigorous living, developing a mind of loving kindness are always beneficial. Once again, knowing theory is good, but practicing is what leads to fruition. So therefore, practicing this way will help one to gain realization. Initially, the first steps towards becoming a noble person is try and be a good person. And becoming a good person means looking after oneself, looking after one's family, and so on. As you can see this across various suttas, for example, Mahamangala Sutta says to reside in a suitable locality, to have done meritorious actions in the past, and to set oneself in the right course, this is the greatest blessings. To have much learning, to be skillful in handicraft, well-trained in discipline, and to be of good speech, this is the greatest blessing. To support mother and father, to cherish wife and children, and to be engaged in peaceful occupation, this is the greatest blessing. To be generous in giving, to be rigorous in conduct, to help one's relatives, and to be blameless in action, this is the greatest blessing. Metta Sutta describes he who is skilled in good and wishes to attain that state of peace should act thus. He should be able, upright, perfectly upright, amenable to corrections, gentle and humble. He should be content, easy to support, unbusy, simple in livelihood, with senses controlled, discreet, not impudent, and not greedily attached to families. Talking a bit about greedily attached to families, here attachment needs to be a bit specified. So attachment is nothing to do with the physical presence or absence, because one creates attachment in one's mind. Hence, the attachment is something that happens at the mental level, irrespective of whether there are certain objects and beings present or not. In other words, attachment means just simply being aware that everything, including objects and other people, are subject to decay, including oneself. Just the very basic awareness that everything is subject to decay, and so therefore there is no permanent self. And this understanding itself is non-attachment. Once again, it doesn't mean that someone needs to throw off and certain objects out of one's house or out of one's temple, or eliminate people, abandon certain kind of people and so on. As all these attachment and non-attachment happen at the mental level, it is not the presence of these things or beings that matters. It is just mere awareness that everything is subject to decay. He would not commit any slight misdeed that other wise men might find fault in him. May all beings be well and safe. May their hearts rejoice. So these are the kind of things that one should try and practice if one truly wants to gain peaceful Nibbana. And for one who practices Dhamma in the right way, one can expect growth in many different ways and areas of life. As we see in this Sutta, a noble disciple grows by noble growth, grows in field and land, in wealth and grain, wives and children, in slaves, workers and servants, in livelihood, in faith, virtuous behavior, learning, generosity, and wisdom. There are 6 rewards in realizing the fruit of stream tree. One is certain of the true Dhamma, not subject to falling back. There is no suffering over what has had a limit placed on it. One is endowed with uncommon knowledge. One rightly sees cause, along with causally originated phenomena. For those practitioners who are interested in becoming stream enterers, it would be beneficial to try and develop the 4 factors of stream entry. 4 factors of stream entry are, as we can observe across various suttas, unshakable confidence in the Buddha, unshakable confidence in the Dhamma, unshakable confidence in the Sangha, and also noble virtues. Once after developing the 4 factors of stream entry, it is beneficial to develop these 6 things that play a part of realization. As you see in this sutta, you should meditate observing the impermanence of all conditions, perceiving suffering in impermanence, perceiving not self in suffering, perceiving giving up, perceiving fading away, and perceiving cessation. That's how you should train, as you see in this sutta. So there are certain things that one needs to train before becoming a stream enterer, and one needs to train in different ways once after one becomes a stream enterer. The faithful succeed, the energetic succeed, the mindful succeed, those with immersion succeed, the wise succeed. 4 factors of stream entry are repeatedly seen across different suttas, as you see in this slide are some of the examples. And the question that comes next would be, how could one go on developing the 4 factors of stream entry? One of the easiest ways to develop stream entry is to reflect the qualities of Buddha and his teachings. And one might find comfort in reflecting Buddha's teaching as a meditation, whereas another individual might find it easier to reflect on Buddha's and his teachings while engaged in other activities. This is subject to an individual's personal preferences, choices, and likings. Once after one becomes a Sri mentor and move into the next stages, in order to become an anagami, developing jhana at that stage is helpful to reach the state of an arahant. Essentially, the stages of enlightenment provide liberation, as you see in this Ratana Sutta. Those who are well trained, freed from all defilement, and with minds firming Gautam Buddha's training, upon attaining Nibbana, they plunge into the deathless, freely enjoying the liberation they have gained. And similarly, like woodland grows in blossoms in the first heat of summer, is a sublime Dhamma taught by the Buddha, leading to Nibbana and giving the highest happiness. In the Buddha is this precious jewel. So liberation and highest happiness is what one gains by becoming a Sri mentor and beyond. Buddha's teachings are not restrictive at any way. It allows one maximum amount of liberation and the highest happiness. If we were to question why and how the liberation comes, Buddha has appreciated the wise realization of Dhamma and the inner qualities of a person that makes one a noble character and not the external factors such as robe, dwelling, or background, and so on. Given that enlightenment is happening at the mental level, the outside appearance or physical location and similar factors are not contributory factors. This means the practice allows people to make their own choices, and that provides ultimate freedom and are open to almost everyone. Hence, the right practice that also means non-clinging into rites and rituals, as you see in MN 81, Gatikara Sutta. So the Gatikara himself is an anagami and is following a lifestyle that is typical for noble ones by his choice out of rites and rituals. And once again, talking about liberation, although one may think that following certain precepts are a difficult thing, interestingly, once after one gains a right way by becoming a Sri mentor, the need or the importance of precepts diminishes because one naturally behaves with morals consistent with insights and precepts. Therefore, the path leading to Nibbana becomes comfortable and middle way. It certainly allows one to gain liberation and ultimate happiness. It has been often appreciated that maintaining goodwill and loving kindness in day-to-day life is a good quality of a person. I would think we could all agree to this. Interestingly, however, if somebody is genuinely interested in maintaining loving kindness, it is possible to maintain loving kindness in all awakening state with stability by becoming an anagami. With abandoning ill will and sensual desires, an anagami comes to establish a mind full of loving kindness in all awakening states with stability. So this may be of interest to practitioners who are appreciating loving kindness in day-to-day life. To make their practice stable, it becomes possible by following Buddha's teachings. So some of the important and helpful things to gain realization is indeed, to summarize briefly, performing meritorious activities, reflecting the qualities of Buddha and his teachings, and of course, reflecting non-self view. This is the end of this presentation. Thank you very much for listening.